Welcome to the Sound Meets Sound podcast. Today, my guest is Guadalupe Carranza del Castillo, aka Lupe, aka Momo G, and founder of Become. Around the 20-minute mark, you'll hear an excerpt from her former band Mafia Club, track entitled Who Is It? And at the end of the podcast, you can hear her remix of my own Death of Codes track, The Bright Frame of Love. Be sure to check out all of her links on the show page. Enjoy!
So what I'm all about, that's always a difficult question. I'm Lupe to start with, which is already a lot, and then Meg, I started my path in music when I was really, really young. I had my first band when I was 11, and with actually a friend that lives in London too. So when I moved to London last year, my only friend who lived here was one of my oldest friends. So it's so funny to reconnect with that part of me. And then, I had different bands as a teenager. I went to the music conservatory and studied tango in Argentina. And I think I've always been a punk, trapped in the body of a petite Latina girl that had no idea about punk music or experimental music or electronic music from the background that I had. And then in my early 20s, I moved to Berlin, and we actually, our connection, it's through female pressure, and that's kind of the entrance that I had in the music industry in the world back in over a decade ago with Gudrun and Piloka and all these incredible, crazy women that basically showed me experimental electronic music. And then I got really curious and started to learn how to produce, and then I made my band the Mafia Club in Berlin, which was quite a hectic phase of my life. And then I toured solo with Momo G, which is my solo DJ project and so on. And then I had a band in Spain, and after that kind of period ended, I went back to Argentina to kind of recalibrate and observe what my life had been the past, the past decade. And I needed a job, so I found a job in a hypnotherapy school, and the job granted me access to a certification in hypnotherapy. So I did that, and just really out of my own self-development. And it had such incredible effect on me that I felt the call, just like when you feel the call to make a song, or you see like lyrics, or when you feel that thing going through you, was the same with hypnotherapy. So I started taking that as my new project basically. And nowadays it's my full-time job, and I created a podcast also to stay close to the microphone as well. And it's interesting that now that it's summer, for example, and things are a little bit lower with the clients and so on, I've been making music, and I'm working on a new EP, and so everything gets its own timing now, instead of having this wild idea of things needing to happen all the time. It's just like they organize themselves according to what I'm supposed to do in each moment.
Right. Yeah, you're sort of connecting with your own flow and letting that guide you, which is super cool. So thank you for that introduction to yourself. There's a lot that I want to go back and talk about. I'm especially interested in what kind of music you were playing at 11 in your band. What kind of were your influences, and who else was in the band with you?
Yeah, when we were 11, our band was called Bohemian Rhapsody. So that, here we go, the influences. Definitely international pop rock was for us, coming from Argentina. It was everything that was in English was international. And yeah, it was the first one. It was, we just had like music playing from a CD, I guess, and we would just sing on top of it. And then I think 2 years later, I had like a real band, my first real band. And it was actually, I'm still friends with all of them. There was a drummer, guitar player, bass player, and me. I was a singer. And we were just playing covers, like rock covers, like classical rock covers. Yeah, it was funny. I remember we were doing Maria. I think it's called Maria by Blondie. And my sister's called Maria. So my bandmates were like, just scream like if you were calling your sister.
So yeah, you were definitely doing music from a very young age. And then you said you went to conservatory, was it for tango?
Yeah. Yeah, I studied tango performance, kind of like vocal tango performance. The whole performance of a tango, it involves so much drama and so many other things than just the singing. It's quite a thing to sing tango. So yeah, I was. It was not planned really, but then I was going to this conservatory just to do singing lessons, and then my teacher was a tango pianist and started training me. And I was like maybe 14, 15, and I could really stand in front of a crowd with a pianist and sing tango. So they were all very supportive of my voice being so strong in a way, even though for me it was horrible. I wanted to sing like the other girls, but I was able to be there and perform a very dramatic and theatrical piece, which is like tango music.
That's interesting. So you were a young teenager when you were doing that.
Yeah.
It's relatable what you said about what you were doing didn't feel like it lined up with what you wanted to be doing. Like you were talented in singing tango, but you said you wanted to sing like the other girls.
Yeah, totally, 100%. They were singing Nora Jones, and I was like, shit, I can really not do Nora Jones.
Yeah, it sounds like I can't believe that I've never really heard your full-on singing voice, but it sounds like you have a very like strong singing style if you're doing
Yeah.
Blondie and tango.
Yeah, from Blondie to Tango.
There's the first volume of your memoir. That's okay, so that's fascinating. Now I really want to hear you singing tango. I imagine the singing, it's very like acrobatic and very you know, yeah, requires a lot of power.
Yeah, and mostly it tells a very, very melancholic story, so it requires a lot of drama and depth in the feeling. And it's not so much about the technique. It's about being able to express the melancholy and the
Right.
depth of the lyrics. Yeah.
Wow. And teenager Lupe was able to express the deep melancholy. Wow.
Yeah, looks like she could. Yeah.
And so when did you first leave Argentina for Europe, in general?
So I started going to North America first,
Mm.
in my late teens. I would go like I would do like the ski seasons. I would work in the ski
Mhm.
schools. So I would go for the season and then come back for school and so on. And that was until I was 21 or something. And then my 21st, I moved to Mexico.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I went to do and I was studying fine arts, so I went to do an artist residency with these people who, yeah, hosted street artists from all over the world, and then they were opening a gallery with all the pieces they had, and so I moved there. I basically quit university and moved there because to me it was an opportunity that I was going to have this opportunity, and rather I took it, or I stayed in Argentina and finished a career in a small town. To me, that was a no-brainer. So I moved to Mexico, and I became part of the opening of the gallery. And I learned how to sell art and how to be with the artists. What was the process of, from starting the piece till selling it, and really education that you don't get in university. And after that I moved to Berlin. So I was 22 when I moved to Berlin.
So in Mexico, I'm just every step of your story is fascinating here. And I from our past conversations, I kind of knew there were depths there, but I want to I just want to explore every step of the way. It's fascinating. So you said you learned how to sell art in the gallery opening. Were you one of the visual artists as well in Mexico? Okay, so you were learning the business.
Yeah, I was learning the business. I was working with the owners, and I was basically their assistant. And yeah, they taught me everything about art dealing, and here and there I would assist painters. When we would get them walls in the town, in the little town of Tulum. And then they would make also one physical piece that then we would put in the gallery. But then when we would have the artists doing the murals in town, I would be in charge of documenting them and making videos and so on. And sometimes they would let me, they would be like, okay, this whole area needs to be painted with this color, and can you do it for me? And so that was I was like, yes. So exciting.
You got to be the assistant painter, back when all those Renaissance painters had like a studio of people helping them create stuff. So
exactly. Yeah, I was total apprentice. Yeah.
So what was it that you were studying in university that you left to do the Mexico thing?
I was studying fine arts. So basically I did 2 years, which was, the basics, the beginnings of fine arts, which is painting, drawing, sculpture, color, composition. And then on the second year, I started with history. Because I thought I was done with music when I was 20, no, maybe 19, because I had a bad experience, a really bad experience. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to study music. And I was always into painting. So I was like, okay, I'm going to study painting then. So yeah.
What made you decide to go to Berlin after that?
So while I was in Tulum, I met a crew that were living in Guadalajara, another city, and they were working with virtual reality back in 2016, which was like insane. And they invited me to be part of their team and also do like production assistant and so on. And at that time I was a sponge. I just wanted to learn. So I moved from Tulum to Guadalajara, and in Guadalajara I met Piloca, a fellow colleague of us, and then I heard her music, and I was like, hey, I want to make a music video for this. Let's make a music video. So I gathered the team, some of my friends from the team of the VR, and we went to the desert and made a virtual reality music video for Piloca. And then we were like, wow, we are actually a really cool team. We can work really well together. So she invited me to come to Berlin, and the rest is history.
So you got to Berlin, and So are you still did you do virtual reality stuff when you were in Berlin, or did you sort of shoot off into a new direction once you got there?
Yeah, no, the virtual reality stayed in Guadalajara. And also, it was, for me, it was just really a job. It was not that I was into VR
Hmm.
now. Like, it was like another project. And in Berlin, I arrived and I only had a camera. So the first weekend, I was invited to join a workshop that Gudrun Good made with Monica Werkstatt. And because I had the camera, I documented it. And then she commissioned that to make the artwork for the record and the like a music video that we made. So everything kind of like happened by itself, that I started kind of getting my nose inside of this world by, by any means I could. If at that time I only had a camera, I was very far away from music at that time, and definitely was not a music producer, or was not even thinking about becoming a music producer. So I was like, oh, I'm just gonna document it. And
However, we now today know that you were not done with music. So, what sort of led you back to creating music from this place of like, oh, I'm not a musician anymore?
yeah, I remember entering the studio, Gudrun's studio, that weekend, and I was like, "Fuck, this is all I dream on being. Honestly, this is what I dream on being. This is so cool." And and then I started feeling the call of my voice, little by little, like, come on, explore me again, I'm here, and so on. And then I think it was 1 or 2 years after that some friends from Mexico came to Berlin to showcase their project, and they rented a boat and made like a jam session in the boat with a lot of different musicians. And they invited me because I was their friend, and I grabbed the microphone and I stayed 7 hours with their microphone in my hand in the jam. Like, no one could move me from that place.
Wow, 7 hours?
7 hours. We were 7 hours riding this boat, and I never left the spot that I was in. I was also like, if I leave the microphone, someone's gonna grab it, so I'm not gonna leave it.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
then from there, everything happened really fast. After that, those same friends from Mexico, they invited me to apply to this kind of collaboration they were doing with Jägermeister, which was a week-long production mentorship for upcoming Latin American artists. So they basically they invited me to apply, and that summer I got a friend borrowed me a double string bass and his studio with a whole modular system, and taught me like the ABC of how to record and stuff. And I just stayed 3 or 4 months inside of the studio, just exploring with these sounds and the bass, and did my first like little songs. And I was doing this Ableton course that it was like 45 hours, and I was just obsessively I was producing one song a day by the end of the summer. And then by the end of that year, I was invited for the first time to participate as a surprise guest in the Monica Werkstatt, which was like a live session, like a jam with Gudrun Good, Beate Bartel, and Piloka Krach, and me, which I was like, what? These are my idols. And I sang a little part of a tango in that session, and with my two
Wow.
string bass, yeah. And then by the end of that year, I applied to this. It was called Music Platz, this Jägermeister thing. And so they selected me together with, I think, 10 other kids from Latin America. And then in March, we went to Mexico City to do this thing, which was a whole week of really intense master classes with different producers and mixing engineers and so on. And I worked with Santi Rodriguez. His artist name is Evil Tapes, which blew my mind. I was like, oh my God, this is so much fun. Like being in the studio, making a song from beginning to end, and then showcasing it and listening to it in a like big location. And so from there, I just went full on obsessive with making my first project, which was the Mafia Club.
Well, thank you for sharing that part of your journey. It's like my head is spinning just trying to follow you around the globe.
Mine too, Meg. Mine too.
So yeah, what was the Mafia Club all about?
So the Mafia Club was, I mean, I'm 20, 24 or something, and I am just I'm in Berlin now. I'm full on like, absorbing this energy that I've always craved but never had, which is like pure like punk and in your face. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter if it's not finished, I'm here anyways. And fuck capitalism and all that stuff. And then no, I was not really like fuck capitalism really, but I was really, I wanted to do something very provocative. And so the Mafia Club, it was almost like a theater show, like a musical kind of thing, which was a story I wrote about this rich busy bitch, which was she was the hooker of a cartel boss, and she kills him and runs away with a bag full of diamonds and arrives in Kazakhstan when she escapes and meets DJ Cash, and together with DJ Cash, where they're making the Mafia Club, which is kind of like a secret society, and so there's no videos or there's no nothing. I mean, there are music videos now about it, but in the moment it was all about presence and being there. And I always had like a fake gun on stage, and I would like point on people and say like I hate boring people and shit like that. And
Wow.
Yeah, and it was all about like my money, my drum machine. I had a song that's called "My Father's Credit Card" because people would suspect on why she's so rich, and then she would say, "I just have my father's credit card," and then the classic song it's "Who Is It," which is all about who is it that you really are, which is still my very strong line of work, even with hypnotherapy. Who is it that you really are, and be that.
Yeah, that's like like almost performance art, really.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, it was very performative.
yeah, and inhabiting that character.
Yeah, fully
Um,
dragged also, and
every step of the story, I'm like, how does she get from there to here? So I'm curious how you sort of, I assume Mafia Club kind of ended, or is it still something that you revisit, or did you just, end it and move to the next thing?
yeah, I fully killed the Mafia Club at some point.
Mhm.
Yeah, we went from zero to a million very fast, and
Mhm.
it got a little bit out of my hands, and it was my first experience with like a little bit of fame, a little bit of attention, and I was still
Mhm.
very young, so I also got really much in my ego, and so we ended up all. It was, I mean, it was like a fulfilled prophecy. Like we almost all kill each other, and there was only left a table full of blood and diamonds, and it was a great lesson. I learned what it is to be totally absorbed by a character, also. By a
Right.
the art can really take you and yeah, possess you almost.
So you've got this table full of blood and diamonds, and what's your next? Where do you go after that?
Yeah. So after that, I was very distrustful. I think I start kind of like my like the last period of my 20s being like, okay, now I know how to produce music. Now I know how to be on stage, all over, like in festivals. And now I've had releases. Now I learned how this industry looks like. So, and now I'm a DJ. So now I'm going to go for it by myself because I don't trust anyone anymore. And so I started I basically birthed Momo G, and I went deep with. I did perform Mafia Club here and there with other people. Like I would just like play the music and have other characters on stage, and then that was not the same. And so I just started making my own music, Momo G music, and had a few years of just like you know experimenting between DJing and kind of hybrid sets. I would do the vocals live and maybe have a synth next to me, and then I went full punk because everything was always very unfinished music and not mixed and so on, and from there, from that state of mind, I went to Formentera, to an island, to do an artist residency, and 2 days in, I had a new band, and they were all Spanish, and so I went through basically the last band of my 20s, which was completely different to everything I've done before. And that was kind of like the blue ribbon. It was like, okay, this period of my life, now it's done. And yeah, when I finished touring with them, I went back to Argentina.
So you went back to Argentina right around when you turned 30 then.
Exactly, yeah.
Just want like a mini series of your whole life here. So then you get back to Argentina, and you said that was, you were like, oh, I need a job. And so you got a job at the hypnotherapy place,
Yeah, the hypnotherapy school, yeah.
and they just offered the certification.
Basically, like, I was selling the certification.
I see. I
So
see.
for me to sell it, I needed to know what I'm selling, right?
Right.
So that's how I got into the studies of hypnotherapy. Yeah, I mean, I was already like 2 years prior to that, when COVID started, I started teaching voice activation. I would teach people how to open their voice and work with their voice and love their voice and make friends with their voice and so on. But it was really out of pure instincts. And then when I got my hands into hypnotherapy, I was like, what if I mix this? Because now, like this would be also more in the paper, like what if I use all this knowledge I have now, like proper knowledge on how to work with the mind and this technique and this method, to sorry, I have guests at home and they just arrived, and so then, yeah, basically when I came back to Argentina, I was in a place where I needed a lot of hypnotherapy and therapy. and
Hmm.
and so, little by little, I started really getting into it.
When did you start like taking on clients and working with other people on it?
Yeah, so after I think a year and a half of practicing with my grandma, my father, my friends, myself, and yeah, I think I was 1.5 years. My grandma took sessions from me every week for 1.5 years, and
Wow.
yeah, and she's a yoga teacher since like 35 years or something. So she could really guide me, and she was like, Lupe, there's something here for you. Like, yeah, she really encouraged me, and my grandma taught me how to teach. And because obviously as a grandmother, it's for her was, she was worried that I was living the life that I was living. She
Hmm.
was really happy that I was doing something so good for me and good for others, and so she really encouraged me to that. And for me, it was almost like I had my family so many times on the edge of, being worried about me and so on, that I was like, you know what, I kind of owe them being a respectable, responsible adult. And I started it from that place, really, when I did the certification and everything. And then it became something that, it became my life at some point. Nowadays, it's impossible for me to, even if I would go back and do anything that I've done before the hypnotherapy, it's like, I mean, it because you do it. It's kind of
Yeah.
like something that once you see it, you cannot unsee it. And so even if now I'm making music, so now I started making music again. So last year I had my last show. I So yeah, basically to answer your question, I was 1.5 years just training with hypnotherapy and neurolinguistic programming with another person that was teaching me neurolinguistic programming. And then I got my first client, which was, I think, like a 2 months thing. And she was also a hypnotherapist.
Hmm.
So it was awesome to see if I was actually good at it. And then I got my other client, which was like my only client for a really long time. And then only like 6 months ago, or yeah, like in January, I started really taking a lot of clients. And now it's going to be 3 years since I did the studies, so now I'm really confident about it. And so last year, when I was still in Berlin, I did a collaboration with a music producer, and we had a release. So they invited me to play in a club. So I had quite a big gig in the Katerblau in April, and then I had a few more gigs. And then in August, I got a request, And I was like, yeah, but I'm so tired of playing by myself. I want to play with a band again. So I had a drummer that I met in a bar, and then I put a sign on Facebook to get a bass player and a drummer. A bass player and a guitarist. And I set up this band in 1 week. Well, in 2 weeks, and we had 4 rehearsals, and then we played the show. Yeah, that was the last show I've ever played.
I remember we were working together by that point, and yeah, I remember being super impressed that you were just like, I'm going to put a band together. We'll sort of, rehearse for four times and then just perform. And I was like, especially coming from a classical training background, I was like, that just the freedom of that sounds really enticing. It's amazing. I wish I could have gone to that show.
Oh yeah, it was actually quite epic.
I'm sure it was. You don't seem to do anything lower speed than epic. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, I am curious to hear a little bit about, what like you said, it's just normal for therapy to sort of have a lull in the summer. So you're working on your music. I'm curious what that looks like for you now that you've been through all this.
Yeah. Oh my God, so interesting because so last year when I moved to London, I had a DJ gig at like a friend's birthday party, and it was like I just arrived there, and I played, and it was a really good party. And then when I finished, like people would come and, like when they come and say that they loved it and blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, thank you, thank you. And then my partner came and he was like, hey, sorry, but I need to ask you. And I'm like, yes. He's like, why is it that you don't enjoy when people come and celebrate you? And I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, well, and I was like, shit, he can really see through me. And I was like, wow. And I went into a period of understanding that my experience with music and performing and putting myself out there had been quite traumatic. Like I've always done it from a place of proving myself and, going there with a lot of like attitude of like, you better fucking see me now. And so I always felt very when good things happened to me musically, I always felt much of an imposter. And so my relationship to music was kind of like very wounded, and my partner is a musician. He's from New Zealand. His band, it's gonna be now, I think it's the 20-year anniversary. It's called Bad Town. And he told me, I have a new mission. I'm gonna get you to enjoy music again. And I was like, yeah, right. And then we went to a rehearsal room one day with him and another friend, Dano, another legend from New Zealand. And they're like, they're like, they play proper music and they play like heavy metal and stuff. And I was like, I'll just bring my little keyboard and la 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 la. And I had so much fun in the rehearsal room with them and just jamming. And he would come and be like, hey, do you need me to show you the keys? And like very friendly and very supportive and very understanding, while I've been in situations where, maybe I didn't know the keys because I'm not classically trained pianist or anything like that. I don't,
Right.
And now I kind of know the keys. But back in the days, being, with people 15, 20 years older than me, that it's not everyone, but I've had some experiences of being almost like mistreated for not or for having a different way of approaching music and so on. And so I was like, wow, this is so generous that you just like take 2 minutes and show me the keys so that we can keep going, instead of like sitting there and telling me that I'm making everything slow and that if I can play something, like instead of shaming me, you are supporting me and encouraging me. And I was like, this is so incredible. And And then actually when I was doing your remix, that was the first time that because I was like, look, I don't want to, this is such a great relationship, I don't want to ruin it by making music together. And my partner was like, how do you even come to those ideas? Like, what are you talking about? And I was like, trust me, it always gets shit. and so when I did your remix, actually, it was the first time that I was like, hey, maybe you can, he's a sound engineer, so I was like, maybe you can do the mixing. And he's like, yeah, sure. And he did the mixing, and it was like, like any trauma healing, there was like all these like past memories coming of being in the studio, and then like, okay, it's done and it's great, awesome. And it's, we're two musicians here in a house together. So eventually I told him, like, even I something that I learned about music is that she comes when she's ready and when she wants to, And so I was like, I know music will come again when I'm ready to receive her. And then, yeah, it was just like that. I don't know which is the first song we started doing, but, it was like the full on, like, start